At Chris Kehler Holistic, we demonstrate real healing and real caring to your health issues and needs. Our solution for you is an alternative to the alternative. Our out-of-the-box treatment methods are aimed to your specific well-being and are quite different than most. Venturing down the realm of quantum energy healing, Chris uses unique modalities of healing, such as spiritual intervention with pendulum dowsing, sacred geometry tools such as the neutralization, divinity, and sun ring. Another tool Chris uses is a 5-tiered pyramid affectionately known as the Silver Light Pyramid to activate quantum activity within the body. Also, Chris Kehler Holistic uses radionic technologies in various platforms with specific liquid mineral ionics to balance out excesses and deficiencies within the body. At Chris Kehler Holistic, our goal is to get tangible and measurable results in the least amount of time possible so you can carry on with what's important in your life. Another advantage to this unique energy healing is that it can be done at a distance healing session. So location is not a barrier and can be done conveniently at your home, office, just about anywhere through Skype or telephone conferencing. Eliminate costly protocols, expensive monthly supplements, high-priced allopathic operations, invasive surgeries, and dubious medication applications that keep you trapped in a financial and health rat race. Get a specific, customized, out-of-the-box solution tailored for your health recovery. At Chris Kehler Holistic, we are warm welcoming and want to put you at ease with your visit to us. Please visit www.chriskehler.net for further information as we welcome your questions and inquiries to starting this unique journey. At Chris Kehler Holistic, we want to show you that we are the alternative to the alternative and the out-of-the-box solution to customize an answer for you to spend less and gain more in your high vibrancy journey. Visit www.chriskehler.net. Real healing and real caring to your health needs.
Let me introduce to the world Mr. Chris Kehler.
I am your host, Chris Kehler. Hey, it's snowing in Winnipeg. Oh, look at that. I'm looking out my window and the snow is coming down. The weather report said it was going to snow, and look at that. They were right for once in their lives. We have a guest on tonight, real special guest. Tonight we're going to have on Jimmy Church, host of Fade to Black. We're going to bring him on in a few minutes. I've got a few updates that I want to talk about first in the whole healing energy realm game. Now, everybody knows that, or most people know about the work that I do, working with energy to do healing for health problems. I'm finding many, many new things coming forward to do to help people, and it's making a difference. And I always say that all the funny sounding things that I find that I work with, when you remove it from somebody and they notice that all of a sudden they can move their arms right away, you know there's some validity to it. What I'm seeing in my work with the entities and the energies I'm clearing, I think is correlating a lot with what is being shaken out of the planet. And we are heading toward this age of ascension, the fifth dimension consciousness. We are heading that way, and I think there's going to be a storm before the calm, before things settle down, where things are just going to shake out and leave. Now, have you seen any of the videos, or if anybody in the chat room, I want you to chime in. If anybody's seen any of the videos on YouTube of these people showing a star or a planet beside the sun, we're calling it Nibiru, Planet X, whatever. Has anybody seen any of that? Does anybody have any information or a debunk or something? I've seen the videos and they're pretty interesting. They're quite convincing. But of course, you always have to put that little vein of conspiracy beside it. Is this somebody recording, a light behind something or whatever? But right. If there's anybody who's seen or knows anything about it, I'd love to hear about it.
I had a guest the other day, and that actually put a time on the time that it's going to come into where you're actually literally going to be able to not miss it.
Okay.
And that's somewhere around May or June, in between, actually April and June.
That's not too far away.
Nope. And they're seeing it right now. There's parts on this planet that people have said they can actually see something else next to the sun when you look.
There's a few videos. There's one very convincing video somebody took, and it was only maybe 5-6 days ago, last week I think it was, that they posted it. So it's all relatively new stuff. Anything that's 3-4 years old, don't even bother looking at it. It's not relevant anymore. This is very new. I've watched the video many times, and one person actually takes a video and dissects it with different filters. And
right.
You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's the planet Venus. It's got to be Venus." Well, he shows you where Venus is. I don't know, man. There's certainly something to it. What else is new? We are in the convergence. 5 planets. Convergence is all about the ascension process. It's all about the age of Aquarius. It's all about gates opening and things happening. And it is creating a scenario for more reptilians to get off of this planet. Goodbye, you lizard son of a guns. I mean, that's all I can say about that. And I am seeing it within my work that the reptilian concept is definitely getting the heck out of here. And it's just making life a lot easier for me and for other energy workers to get our job done, because we're not battling that reptilian consciousness all the time. I'm finding many, many new things coming forward to do to help people, and it's making a difference. And I always say that all the funny sounding things that I find that I work with, when you remove it from somebody and they notice that all of a sudden they can move their arms right away, you know there's some validity to it. And the biggest thing with the whole concept of it is to know what the problem is, to identify what it is. And there's a couple of very big things that have come up, and one of them is bovine fever. Now, remember the big to-do about mad cow disease a few years ago, I guess it was. What I'm finding with the bovine fever, or the mad cow disease, my guides want me to call it bovine fever, so that's what we're calling it. I am finding it within the nervous system of humans. And what's happening is people are experiencing, let's say, weak legs, sore lower back, heavy legs, that type of thing. So it's affecting the lower nervous system. But what I'm also finding, and I did a clearing on somebody in the UK, I think it was Friday, and her legs were heavy, sore, tired. If she walked any big distance, they would certainly be tired and heavy. As soon as I removed the bovine fever out of the femoral nerves and her spinal cord, all of a sudden her legs were light and she could do a squat on the ground and get up without any kind of trouble. So that tells me itself right there that there is some validity to this. And it's all coming from the steroids that they're putting in the meat, all of the antibiotics, all of the crap that they're putting in the meat. It's causing these problems within us. But what else I'm finding is that this bovine fever is going to go into your thyroid. Now, my view on the thyroid, and a lot of other alternative practitioners work this way, is that the thyroid is a distributor of electricity into your body. The thymus is the generator. The thyroid is the distributor. And there is different energies that go to the pancreas, that go to the brain, go to the heart, different places. And I'm finding that this bovine fever is getting into these different parts of the thyroid 1, thyroid 2, that distribute electricity to different places. So I've been working with the bovine fever, working against diabetes on people, and we're getting some minor changes. I have worked on a few people who said, yes, their blood sugars have definitely changed. They haven't gotten to perfect, but it's definitely on the right way. I'm really excited about finding that. And that was brought to me a couple of weeks ago by my guides, who just said, hey, Chris, you got to pay attention to bovine fever. If you're eating a cheeseburger right now, don't worry about it. You're not going to get bovine fever. And there's also negative energies involved too. Let's bring on our guest. A little bit about Jimmy Church. Jimmy Church is the host of Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and syndicated on KGRA. Jimmy started his career in the music business. I love it, Jimmy. Producing bands in Hollywood back in the hair days, back in the 80s on Sunset Strip, all the while studying ufology, the paranormal, and conspiracy theories. Growing up, Jimmy Church was influenced by his mother, who was an avid reader of Edgar Cayce and Eric von Daniken. She had an open mind for all things paranormal, and this outlook on the world from childhood, it still happens every time Jimmy's on the air. Let's bring on host to Fade to Black, Jimmy Church. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Absolutely perfect.
I was in a weird position, I guess, with ufology and the paranormal. I was a sportscaster after I left the music business, and I got into sportscasting, but that wasn't my real love. And I had, in my closet, a collection of books and videos and knowledge, and I had studied it my entire life. And I thought, I just want to combine, the entertainment industry and music and sports and the paranormal into one show. And we geared up a few years ago to make the format change, and the timing was just right. And Fade to Black took off, and Coast to Coast got a hold of me, and George Norrie, he became a fan of the show. And the next day, things just opened up. It was, I think the public was ready. It was the right time, the right place for another show like this. And then History Channel and everything else that happened right after that was just because I think the public, the audience out there is ready for this type of discussion. And I just decided to make the change, and here we are today. It's been an incredible ride.
What I'm seeing, and it's escalating at an alarming rate, the rate of disclosure. When I say the word disclosure, that means the coming forward with the truth and reality about extraterrestrials, about UFOs, about the whole game outside of our reality that is happening, affecting our reality. Now, I'm on Facebook all the time, and I'm on YouTube all the time, researching things. And the more you look, of course, the more you dig, the deeper the hole gets, the more you find. And the amount of disclosure that we're seeing, and people say, oh, when is disclosure going to happen? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's happened. This has happened a long time ago already, where a lot of people are coming forward, people who have all of this high clearance experience coming forward and actually talking about it.
Well, it's been there the whole time, but you have to kind of look at the whole instead of individual examples that you're referring to. And what I mean by that is this. You have the success of Ancient Aliens. It's now going into its 9th season. That's incredible. And look at the resurgence of the X-Files right now and in the public, arena. So if you look at that, when you accept Ancient Aliens, or you accept the UFO conferences, or you accept the success of the X-Files, it's the people that watch those shows, like me, the people that have been into ufology and the paranormal. That's a very small segment of that audience. We're talking about tens of millions of people that are exposed. X-Files this past week, 23.5 million people watched that show. Probably 500,000 of those viewers were people like you, myself, and Bob that are interested into the subject. But it exposed another 12 million people that have never heard of Element 115 or free energy or alien DNA or these concepts. And they are ready for it. So that's the part of disclosure. When we're talking about military experts coming forward or John Podesta in his tweets, that's a very small part of it. The disclosure is wide. It's huge. And so when you expose 12 million people to the X-Files and Element 115, think about what happened on Google the very next day. People that have never heard of free energy are suddenly Googling the concept, and they're being exposed to it, and they are okay with it. So I think disclosure, that part of it is drip, 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 but it's extreme these days. And I think that the public is okay with conspiracy. I think conspiracy is the new norm, where tinfoil hats in the 60s was nuts.
Well, in that show,
okay.
in that show that you're talking about, Jimmy, they actually came out and said with the floating spaceship,
yes,
that it was Earth's energy that was making the floating spaceship float.
Right,
they came out and said it. I mean, this is something that the government and military has been saying, no, there's no such thing. They said it right on the show.
Well, see, this is the thing about Chris Carter, where he's so great. When I watched the first episode of X-Files, I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's what I do every week on Fade to Black or Coast to Coast or Hangar One, right? These are the things that we're talking about all the time, and my audience gets that. But to talk about free energy in that the power of exposing to millions of people, Chris Carter's done his research, and he knows that is something that nobody else has heard about, but it could be real. And that's the beauty of this exposure that is happening to millions of people around the world. And I think that today they're okay with it. It's a very strange thing when I think about disclosure. And Chris, you're absolutely right. You said this at the beginning of the show. Disclosure's already happened, but I say this all the time when I'm speaking in public or I'm on the air. My audience gets it. They do. They get it. I'm speaking to the wrong people. I need to speak to the people that don't know. When I was at the MUFON symposium, and I was on Friday night, and I was the closing speaker that night. I step out, and there's 1,000 people there. And I said to everybody, Hangar One is great. History Channel is great. Ancient Aliens is great. Fade to Black is great. Coast to Coast is great. And I'm speaking to all of you. But I'm speaking to the wrong audience. I need 1,000 people here that don't know what we're talking about.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
That's then I'm talking, because it's not wasted breath, but everybody gets it. And that's why things like the X-Files and Ancient Aliens and Hangar One and these productions that are going on are so important, because it exposes people that have never, ever, would ever cross that line. And I think it's great. And yeah, we are getting really close to something big happening.
That is the great thing about internet radio. And I say this all the time, like shows like this, shows like yours, Coast to Coast, Caravan to Midnight, all these shows on the internet are picking up all of these subjects, and they're talking about them, and they're bringing it out there. They're educating the people. You're not going to hear stuff, I guess, on mainstream radio or TV. It's just not going to happen. That's why internet radio is so cool, because you can do this type of thing, and nobody's going to shut you down. Bob would not dare shut me down. Now, would you, Bob?
Nah, I had David Icke on here the other day. Are you kidding? He shut down Canada, right? He's not allowed there.
Disclosure, I went to a paranormal concert in Winnipeg a couple years ago, and I met Chris Rutkowski, who is the Canadian UFOologist. He's the head guy who, when there's any kind of report of a UFO, he goes and checks it out. And I asked him about Hellier.
Yeah, Hellier.
Yeah, Hellier came forward. He did videos. He did testimony that ET exists, that UFOs exist. And I asked him about that, and he said, that guy's on drugs. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's old, and he's off his rocker. I just looked at him and said, seriously? Here's a guy with credibility. He's probably one of the biggest guys with credibility who would come forward and dare to say this. And you dare to say that he's not credible? There is a fine line between conspiracy and people who follow it and people who all they want to do is debunk it. And he's just wanting to debunk everything.
Well, Paul Hellier aside, the serious people in ufology would, and like he was saying, when it comes to Paul, when he was in office, wasn't exposed to any secret information. After he retired, he jumped on the net, did some research, and that's where his knowledge comes from. It's not like he was sitting in, I believe, any secret government meetings or was exposed to the ET presence while he was in office in Canada. That being said, the subject of disclosure and it coming forward, it's not, in my estimation, it's not going to come from the government. And it's not going to come from them for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if they do, then they have to admit to have lied to the public for the last 60, 70, 80 years. And that's just not going to happen. If you want anarchy in the streets,
there you go.
Yeah, have that presentation. So that it's not going to happen that way. If it happens, the proverbial, I hate to say this, but that, the flying saucer on the White House lawn. It's not going to come like that. It's going to happen in an accidental way. We have WikiLeaks. There's the possibility with so much data being online, something being leaked somewhere, something definitive. But it's going to be something that the government can't control. And that is where, when I say accident, it's going to happen that way. Will it be, a flying saucer landing on the 405 freeway here in Los Angeles and stopping traffic during rush hour? Well, if it did happen like that, I think the public, instead of freaking out, is going to trip for maybe 60 minutes. And then they're going to call 911 and say, get this flying saucer off the freeway. I'm late for work. And that's where the public is today. I think that they've accepted that there is life out there. The harsh reality, I think, for all of us is this. With the question that we have had for millennia is staring up at the stars and wondering what is out there. Are we alone? This has gone on from Stone Age man to today. We did it when we were kids. I do it now. We all wonder that question. And if we find out that we are alone, if Barack Obama stepped up to the podium and said, okay, look, I don't want to break any hearts here, but this is how it is. We are alone, right? No, it doesn't exist. We are alone. That's your anarchy in the streets, because now we don't have a reason to live. There's no reason to progress. There's no reason to make friends in the universe. There's no reasons to be concerned about our own planet. We're alone. And that's the frightening concept. If we found out that we weren't alone and they made that the official doctrine and dogma, then we have a reason to look to the future. Then we have a reason to be happy. Then we have a reason to explore. Then we have a reason for a space program. All of those things, and it starts to answer all of those religious questions and everything else that are the holes in our history. And that's where I think the government has got it completely wrong. We can handle it. The Warren Commission and everything that they said about religion breaking down and the financial infrastructure breaking down, and it would just pandemonium. It's the exact opposite. And that's where we are today. And I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we have this programming on cable and on satellite TV and, of course, internet, alternative fringe stuff, the more that we do that, the more that the public gets to go and investigate on their own. They get to go and do their own research and answer their own questions. I say this all the time, Chris and Bob. Don't believe me. Don't believe Chris. Don't believe Bob. In fact, don't believe anything that you hear. Don't do it. Listen, keep your ears open, acquire the knowledge, and then go out and investigate for yourself and answer your own questions. And I think that's what the public is acclimated to today.
That is well put. And if you go on YouTube and you do a search on any kind of video about UFOs or ET, you look at the amount of hits. There's millions of hits on these videos, and it's proof positive that people are looking. We got a question from the chat. What do you think the government is waiting for to disclose media on the lamestream front? And I think you just answered that. If it was exposed, what would happen? There would be anarchy. If it's not exposed, there would be anarchy. I think they really got to keep the trickle of disclosure at the rate it's at right now until all of a sudden humanity's ready to hear the truth.
Well, when you look at that's an interesting comment, and I'll tell you why. With the stance that the Vatican has taken over the last 10 years, an abrupt about face, certainly compared to their stance on the world and the solar system 400 years ago, when they were killing and imprisoning anybody that had statements outside of their dogma, which is today. They say, okay, there's got to be life out there. We own these telescopes around the world. We have our own program. We're searching for it too. And if there is ET, and we think that there is, then that means God is universal. And they're warming up the Catholics and the church around the world for this if it happens. And that kind of trickle is done with intent and with malice. It's not something that is willy-nilly. This is done with forethought. And if you look at it in those terms, what is it that the Vatican knows? What is it? There's a CIA office inside the Vatican, so you can connect this spider web all the way back to Washington, D.C. What is it that they know? Are they communicating back and forth? For them to make throw that softball underarm slow pitch, right, across the plate like that, and they wince, the wince that you do right before you get slapped, right? You're expecting the slap. It's going to come. That's what they did when they threw that softball. They wanted to see what the reaction would be, from the church around the world, and nobody freaked out. And that's an interesting way to look at it if you think about it.
I'm looking at a web page right now, and it says United States Major General blows a whistle on what they really found on Mars. This is from September 23rd, 2015, so very recent. And it goes on to talk about that they found machines on the planet and underneath the ground, different buildings that they're coming forward and saying, yep, it's there. Very high-end people. The statement comes from John Podesta. These are very high-end people coming forward. And there's also, we've got disclosure about ET and UFOs and other races of beings out there. Another big disclosure that's coming out is things like chemtrails. Chemtrails is a big one because number one, it does cause health problems. Megan Edwards used to work for the military, and she was in charge of all of the chemicals, keeping track of who's buying what and what chemicals doing this and what chemicals doing that. And she saw some abnormalities with the MSDS sheets. They weren't filled out properly, so she started asking a lot of questions, and she was faced with comments like, if you want to see your kid again, if you don't want to end up in a mental institution, you're going to shut up. And she's got some videos of watching that are really, really coming forward, because here's somebody who was in that position, who did the work. She didn't sneak around and find information. She actually did it. She actually found the information, and now that she's not in the military anymore, she's coming forward and talking about all this.
So let me go back to the first part, which is Mars. Okay. All right. I'm going to be direct. Let me be direct.
Hit it.
If I'm walking around the surface of Mars and it looks like the images that are coming back that NASA is putting out there, and I'm seeing that landscape, I'm seeing a landscape of something that was there in the past. It doesn't look like the moon. It doesn't look like the Sahara Desert. It looks like stuff. Okay, it does. I can't say specifically what it doesn't look like is a bunch of rocks. There, it looks like a civilization was there at some point, and that is what's interesting. It doesn't look uncivilized. It looks like there was something there. I don't know specifically, but the more that I look at it, I can tell. And there is one image, and then I'm going to move on to Podesta. There was one image that I talked about last week on Coast, which was the dome, the two domes up on the hill. Did you guys see the picture I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I'll share that one.
All right. If I was walking across a desert and I've got no water, no food, and I'm 2 steps away from death, and I look and I see those two domes on the hill, I think, there's water. There's something. There's a structure there. I'm walking towards that. That's what it looks like to me. It doesn't look natural. And that, I depend on my eyes. I depend on my instinct. And when I look at that picture, that just doesn't look right. It looks, well, man-made is the wrong word, but it doesn't look natural. And I would walk to that object because I'm looking to save my life, because it looks like there's something there for me. And that's what I find interesting about what's going on Mars. Also, that the thing with the two domes, it looks like there's a road coming down the hill. Oh, also, let's not forget, 2 months ago, what did NASA announce? Water on Mars, right? Flowing water on Mars. Why are they announcing this now? It's a very interesting thing. And when you couple it with all of the other trickle-down stuff that we have been getting, certainly over the last 2 years, it adds up to, a big big disclosure. And I think we're right there. I want to talk about Podesta for a second. Those Podesta tweets that he had sent out, here in ufology, in my circles, I interview, we're live every night of the week. And I've been able to interview the very biggest, best, brightest people out there, not only on the government side, but researchers and so forth. And the one thing that we have always talked about was Podesta before his tweets. It was always John Podesta is right there. I've got friends that know John, and it was a thing. It was our little ace in our back pocket kind of thing. And when he released those tweets, the one disappointment that he had last year was not pushing for disclosure with Obama. And you have to ask yourself, what is he doing tweeting that? What are you doing here, John? If you are in the government circles, certainly you're tapping him on the shoulder going, dude, you need to chill out with that. Or is he so passionate about this and that he knows something that he can't help himself but to tweet that? That is very important. And remember now, he's in the Hillary camp. I'm not a political guy. I'm not backing anything. But if she gets elected to the White House and her chief of staff, Podesta, is the guy pushing for disclosure and he's tweeting this stuff, you know that there's somebody in the press that is going to bring this up. And how are you going to address it at that point? I'm speaking specifically about Hillary. So we're at an interesting point here. We've, with all of the politicians and military people and different whistleblowers that have come forward, all pretty good, but nobody like Podesta in his position. And for him to do that, it was a big step. What the step is and what it means for the future, I'm not sure. But you can't take the tweet back. And he was very deliberate in what he said in that tweet. He is upset that he didn't push for disclosure. Disclose what? Right? And it's a very, very interesting position that Podesta's got himself in. Excuse me. I've been taping all morning with History Channel, and we just ended right before the broadcast with you guys, and I'm starting to lose my voice. But and I've got a show to do here in a couple hours too as well. Chemtrails. Chemtrails is something that we all can agree on. Finally, Washington is starting to discuss this directly. But NASA, about a month ago, a leaked phone call came out, and which they said that, they were spraying chemtrails up in the high atmosphere to monitor cloud patterns and wind and storms and how they were forming and which direction they would go in. Now, as innocent as that may seem, all it does is say, we've been doing it. And now, how far and wide is it? I don't know. But the chemtrail issue is something that is real, and it's the reason for it. I don't know. Is it weather control? The conspiracies behind chemtrails and the reasons for them are pretty nutty and pretty crazy. But you got to push all of your chips into the middle of the table here and look at all the angles. One of them is one of the crazier views of chemtrails is it's a way to monitor the flow of population, right? So these chemicals come down, they land on your body, and then they're able to follow with satellites and look at the ebb and flow of the population. Now, as crazy as that sounds, it's also extremely creepy. And that, and that's one application for it. If you're going to spray chemicals from the sky, you're going to, you've got different reasons to do that. Is it to cause rain? Is it to control vegetation and growth? Is it to spread disease? Or is it to monitor the flow of the public? It's crazy, but there's so many different applications for chemtrails, which I think all of them would be useful to somebody if you're on the dark side.
Now, with the work I do healing, energy healing. I do dowsing with a pendulum to find out what's causing a person's health problem. And within my realm of work, I do work within the energy of chemtrails, and more so the viruses that are dropped, and we call them chemtrail viruses. Up front and center, my daughter, 2 years old, bless her heart, cutest thing in the world, she's got this runny nose that just won't stop. So my wife says, Mr. Healer Man, fix your daughter. Oh, I start dowsing, start looking for viruses, start looking for bacteria. Can't find it. All of a sudden, I get a message, look for chemtrail viruses. When I removed out chemtrail viruses from her sinuses and her lungs, next day she was perfectly fine. It was a night and day difference. So to me, that's where the validity comes in. And I say this all the time. When there's a kind of a conspiracy thing, black goo, chemtrails, whatever, I put it in my charts. And if I find it and by removing it, it heals somebody, to me, there is the validity. Now, we've got a question. Chris, in your dowsing energy work, what involvement? Why don't the ETs break the treaty to the government silence and let us public know their existence? So, I don't know if you got to speak for the aliens on that one. What do you think, Jimmy?
Well, again, that's very interesting, and I love questions from the audience. It's my favorite thing in the world. Look, we have to look at it from a few different angles here. What I believe, this is what I believe. If okay, let's back up, and I want the person that sent that question in just to go with me on this. Remember the tsunami, right? Back in 2005, tsunami hits, and off of the coast of India is an island, and on that island is a culture that has never had contact with modern society. Okay, and there are very strict laws in India about how close you can get to this island. They don't want them to see boats. They don't want them to see planes. They don't want they want to keep this culture intact. Okay? Are you with me so far? So the tsunami hits, and the Indian government said, wait a minute. We've got to go and check and make sure that everybody's okay. So they flew a couple of helicopters over the island just to look down and check. And you know what happened? They shot arrows at the helicopters. They shot arrows. They were throwing spears, right? Now, that is because they don't understand what the helicopter is. They've never seen it. They're tripping out. They don't know what it is. And it's this. Now, if you take that concept with our Earth and our world, if I'm ET, I know I'm getting shot at. If I fire, if I approach Earth, what's the first thing we're going to do? And that is our mindset. And until we get rid of that mindset, I'm not going to fly around the United States. I'm going to get shot at. And that's where I think we are. And I think that ET understands that. I really, really do. They've been here for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. They know exactly what's going on here. And until they know that we're not going to shoot them down and that there's not going to be some confrontation when they get here, then they're not going to do that. So break a treaty with us. When they know that we are ready, then we can look at that treaty and we can look at conversations and dialogue. But I honestly feel that they know they've been shot down before. And there's no question about that. And we will do it again. And we are the only culture. I mean, that's all we want to do is kill each other. It's a very interesting concept when you think about humanity. That's all we want to do is go to war. We have no problems with killing each other. It's a fascinating thing to think about. So ET understands that. Until we are ready to stop killing each other, and we get to that point, then I think the dialogue will happen.
One thing that I did find that did come up was, I think it was 1936. There was a treaty signed by Dwight D. Eisenhower and the Gray Aliens.
1952.
Was it 52? Okay. Something about you give us cell phone technology, computer technology, anti-gravity technology, and you may take some of our humans and dissect them and use them for your whatever you want to do. Is that got any validity to it?
Well, it's certainly there in UFO lore. urban legend. The story goes, he goes to Palm Springs. He's there on vacation, and he goes to Edwards Air Force Base. I think it's Edwards. He goes there, has his meeting with the ETs, which was scheduled, and the treaty was signed. Now, the official stance was when he went to Palm Springs, he got a toothache, abscess, and had to go see a dentist for a root canal, and he's got 4 or 6 hours of missing time. And that is when he went out and did the treaty with ET. There are plenty of stories about that being filmed, and I can go into more detail on that, but we don't have the time. But it did indeed take place, and that the treaty was broken. And the treaty was broken on a couple of different things. One of them, ET was supposed to return anybody back to their original spot where they were abducted. And apparently they broke that side of it. And we broke our side of it by shooting down a couple of flying saucers and did some other things. And that the treaty was broken and hasn't been resolved. And that's the story.
Because we're breaking treaties all the time with ourselves. Why wouldn't we break one with somebody who doesn't live here? Now, as far as aliens go, I'm removing these things out of people on a daily basis. The reptilian contingency, as I said before, is the biggest one. And, again, I'm going to say this, is that when I remove this energy, when I remove whatever it is, reptilian, out of somebody, kaboom, all of a sudden they feel better. All of a sudden their problem goes away. All of a sudden they feel all kinds of energy shifting within their bodies. The Greys were involved. Those reptilians were involved also, and the Greys just invited everybody in for a have-at-it party, and the reptilians really took over and started using us at much different levels than ever intended.
Well, okay, okay, man, I've got so much to say on that subject.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Let me start here. I've had my own strange experience. Happened one time back in 1995, 96. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had something standing in my bedroom, and I lived alone. And this experience, which lasted for about 15 minutes, I didn't share with anybody for about 10 years. And I've since talked about it on the air, and the cat's out of the bag. There were certain things that happened that I haven't spoken about, and I'll keep that private. And the reason why I do that, Chris, is when I interview somebody and they want to tell me about their experience, I have my evidence, right? I know what I went through, and I'm listening for those little things to vindicate myself and also validate what they are saying. Do you follow me? Now,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and so when somebody comes at me now because of my own experience, and they talk about reptilians or mantis beings or Greys or Nordics or whatever, I know that if I didn't have my own experience, then it's just sensationalism and what have you. I'll let somebody tell their story. But I know what happened to me, and it was a very strange experience to go through. And this was in the middle of Los Angeles. Was there a craft above my condo? I don't know. I don't know how he got there. I don't even know how he left, by the way. But he was there. And it was for 15 minutes. So when somebody talks to me about this, I have to listen with open ears. I don't know about reptilians because I've never seen one. I don't know about mantis beings or tall Nordics. I had this little gray guy standing in my bedroom in the middle of the night, blinking his eyes at me, and it was a pretty tripped out experience. But then I have to flip the story over and look at ourselves. Chris, I see what you look like. You're bald. Bob's got glasses. He's got hair. I'm a fat white guy, right, with a goatee, right? Now, if the three of us with our dog and maybe a girlfriend, or how about somebody black or Asian? we went to another planet and stepped off the flying saucer, they're going to think, our spacecraft, they're going to think that we are 3 or 4 unique things. They're not going to think that we're all exactly the same. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when we think about what's coming here to Earth, why would we expect everything that we see to be exactly the same? There are billions of planets out there. There are billions of galaxies and solar trillions. And so many different cultures and things that know that we are here. And why would we expect it to just be grays or just be this or just no? Because right now, walk down the street, you see humans, they all look different color hair, different weight, different heights, different color skin, different colored eyes. And then we have dogs and cats and monkeys and other things that are all just part of this planet. And that's why when we would speak about reptilians or man, of course, why not? Because we would be the exact same thing if we went somewhere else, and we're only from one planet. There's one thing I want to address, and it's this. The question of ET knowing that we are here. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. That's a long time. And and if you span out 4.5 billion years and you look at the last 100 years of this planet, somebody that was born in 1900 and lived to the age of 70 years, 1900 to 1970, would have seen covered wagons, cars, airplanes flying for the first time, telephones, record players, jet aircraft, World War II, Elvis Presley, and Jimi Hendrix, all in one lifetime.
Yeah.
That's insane if you think about it. Now, you take that little piece, that's 100 years of evolution and technology for us, and you go out into the universe and you find somebody that is just 1,000 years in front of us. How about 1,000,000 years in front of us? Well, they are doing the exact same thing that we are doing here, which is go out and try to find other life. That's what we are doing. Hubble, Kepler, our probes that are going out into the solar system looking for life. That's what we're doing. Well, if somebody's been doing that for 1,000,000 years in front of us, do you think they know we're here? Of course they do. It's a beautiful blue planet. And they've known about us for a long, long, long time. And so is it one culture that has been here? No, it's been thousands. They all know that we're here. Of course they do. Could you imagine for 1 second, you and Bob are in your little spacecraft, right? And you're cruising through the solar system. You're just doing your drive-by and you're sipping your sodas and you're driving and you look out the window and you look at planet Earth. What do you see? You see life, lights. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. It's blue. It's covered with water. It glows in the dark. Everybody knows that we are here. Everybody does. And that's it. That's the end of the story. And why do I look at it like that? Why? Because we're doing the exact same thing. We are out looking for other planets. Imagine the technology that we're going to have in another 100 years in looking for other planets. How about another 1,000 years? So when you look at the age of the solar system and other intelligences out there looking for us, they've been doing it forever. So could they have driven by here 1,000,000 years ago? We're 4.5 billion years old. And you have to look at that. If you look at that in a timeline, if you, Bob and Chris, just think about this for a second. Take a line in the room that you're sitting in. Go from the left wall to the right wall. A nice, bright, red, glowing line. And that's 4.5 billion years. Okay? Any slice in that line of 100,000 years is infinitesimal. It's like a hairline. 100,000 years. And if you go all the way to the right to the end of that 4.5 billion years to today, The paint on the wall is the last 2,000 years of our existence. The paint, that little sliver. So that's all that we know in history, that 2,000 years. Or, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 years. It's a very small amount of time. So how many times could we have been visited behind that 10,000-year layer of paint? It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Well, it's mind-blowing to say the least, and if you look at all of the relics on the planet, all the pyramids, the Bosnian pyramids, all the pyramids that aren't even found yet, structures in Egypt, Stonehenge, they weren't built by us. They weren't put here by us. These are ancient civilizations from many, many thousands of years ago that put those there.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the best examples of course, we have Göbekli Tepe that wasn't even supposed to exist. And when you look at the concept of, this is what's really interesting. If you look at the concept of what academia is trying to push down us in the Egyptologists and in the mainstream academia, it is that everything started in Egypt at 2500 BC. And there you go. And Iraq and Sumer and the wheel and fire. And somehow Stone Age man, when the rest of the world at 2500 BC, 3000 BC was running around wearing animal skins and foraging for seeds, that somehow some guy's walking across the desert in Giza and says, hey, you know what? Check this out. Let's go ahead and clear out 18 hectares of this limestone rock. Let's level this and let's build a 42-story building. What do you guys say? And not only that, let's make it due north. Make those four corners match. Let's do that. How about 2.5 million blocks? Let's carve that and let's do a 16-story perfectly straight tunnel up to a room full of 300 tons of red granite. And we're going to get the red granite from 500 miles away. And we're going to drag that across the desert. We're going to make that perfect. And we're going to make it earthquake proof. What do you guys say? Let's just do it. Didn't happen like that. It just didn't happen. Nobody woke up one day with knowledge. Everything is taught. So if it's taught, it came from before. It's what I think. I think they inherited the pyramids. I think
absolutely.
They inherited it. Upper and Lower Egypt were merged and the dynasty started and they said, hey, check this out. We got some pyramids here. Let's check these out, because they were already there. And the fact that they look like they do today, the same that they did 2,000 years ago, is because they were built to last forever. I don't know how, who, what, or when, but they weren't built in 2500 BC. No, it just didn't.
Absolutely no. There's absolutely no way that can happen. And you got to be very, very narrow-minded if you think that they were built in our lifetime. It's just not the way it is. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to throw something at you. And I see this debate all the time on Facebook. Flat Earth.
Oh, I knew you were going there. I felt that coming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. It's fascinating to me how something like flat Earth can pick up steam and take off. That part of popular culture is fascinating to me. It's just utterly fascinating. I had on, I don't want to name names, but I did a flat Earth show a few weeks ago and I brought on the guy, right? Bring him on. And there's just, okay. I lived in Panama, right? I lived in the Canal Zone and I used to watch the ships come in from over the horizon and cruise through the Panama Canal. Lived on this little island that was attached by a causeway and stuff. And I was able to sit out there and watch these ships. And what was interesting for me, being very young, is, I was 15 years old, was trying to figure out what kind of ship it was, right? What was it? Was it a cruise liner? Was it an aircraft carrier? Was it hauling cars? Was it a freighter? Is it oil? But I was fascinated with technology, mechanics, and ships, and they're big and they're beautiful. And that's what I would do. So I would watch them come over the horizon, right? The mass, the top, and then as it got big, and I would do this all the time. Well, one day I get on a boat, a ferry, and I go out to another island, 12 miles away. And as I get up to the island, what I found out was, which I didn't know, on the other side of the horizon was like 50 or 100 freighters parked, waiting to come into the canal. I never saw it. It was on the other side of the horizon. And I thought, wow, the earth is cool. It's round, rising, and right on the other side, I didn't know this, was a parking lot full of, can you imagine 100 freighters sitting there anchored? And
so if Earth is flat, you would have seen these.
So I confront this flat earther guy in my show about this, and I showed him the maps on Google Earth. I said, do you see that? I lived here on this island. Do you see these 50, 100 freighters sitting out here? I didn't know that those were there. And you could see it all in Google satellite. And I just stopped him in his tracks. So don't tell me, because I'm telling you what I saw. I discovered on the other side of the horizon was a parking lot full of freighters, not little fishing boats, huge, the biggest ships in the world. And that's, so I just depend on my own eyes, and I'm just fascinated that people buy into it, and it certainly picked up steam. We'll see how quick it dies off.
Here comes all these people with this philosophy of flat Earth. It just blows my mind.
Well, let me close with this. This is the point. I don't care if the Earth is flat. I don't care. It doesn't change me. Doesn't change absolutely anything. And if it was flat, why have a conspiracy to hide it from us? It just doesn't make any sense. I don't care if it's flat. I don't care if it's round. I still get to go to Disneyland or Disney World or go to the Himalayas. Nothing changes. I still have to work. I still have a show to do every single day. It doesn't change anything. I don't care if it's flat or not.
And Christopher Columbus proved it in 1492.
Many people have. But so what? Why even care if it's flat? But apparently some people are buying in.
Ladies and gentlemen, you really have to know nowadays how to discern. People are trying to create a lot of turmoil. People are trying to create negativity within our lives. People are trying to throw it forward to distract us from what is real, from what we need to know on this planet to survive. Tonight, our guest has been the wonderful Mr. Jimmy Church. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jimmy.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Bob. And you guys behave and keep rolling that rock uphill.
This is Chris Kehler out.